Oh hey guys, so I put out a video a couple days ago about a really common scenario with basal anchors where my rope is coming up from the ground through a good union, but then it's caught on a small branch just above the union. And the point I was trying to make was that if that small branch was to snap, you're not going to fall the distance above the union, you're going to fall double that distance. Now I got a lot of questions online, not just on YouTube, about this concept, and you know, people were like, what are you talking about? How is that possible? Check out what I've got set up here. I have a quick little demo just to show you what I'm talking about. We're going to do a drop test with a load cell here. Okay. I have suspended here is just 100 pounds, about 48 kilos. But before we get into that, let's just take a quick look at that video from 2 days ago, okay? Oh, hey guys, just something to consider when you're setting up a basal anchor. It's very common that your rope will get snagged on a little branch or a piece of epicormic or something above the union. I do always try and snap those from the ground, but quite often you just can't snap them. So it's very tempting to think, well, if I'm climbing and that does break, all that's going to happen is my rope's going to slide down into that union. But what I wanted to mention is you're not going to fall this distance, you're going to fall twice that distance because the rope's doubled over. So you're going to fall that distance on the back side, and you're also going to fall that distance on the front side, right? And I actually took a pretty bad fall last year. A little twig snapped, and I just wasn't considering the doubling effect. So just keep that in mind, guys. All right, so let's take a look at what I have set up. So if the blue rope here, this is Yale Blue Moon, this represents my climbing line on a basal anchor. So down here it's tied at the base, it runs up through a good union, which is represented by this carabiner on the load cell. Okay, that's the union. And then it's caught on a small twig, which is represented here by this quick release. Okay, and then on the fall of the line here, this is where I'm climbing. The climber is here, represented by this 100-pound load. Okay, so you can see on the load cell here, it's reading 8 pounds. There's really no load on it. I just reset it. It just won't go to 0. But anyway, it's set on max. So when I do the drop test, it's going to tell us what the shock load is on this system, okay? So again, if this is the union, I've moved this prusik to approximately the same level as the union. So hopefully you can tell what I'm talking about here. You know, if the question is how much slack is in this system, the answer is not the height distance between the union and the twig. The answer is double. There's all of this is slack in this system, okay? So let me get a tape measure here. Okay, so this is approximately about 8 inches. The quick release represents a twig which is about 8 inches above my tie-in. Okay, so what we want to see is if this was to snap, this twig, how much load, you know, what would happen at the tie-in, how much shock load on the system and everything would we experience, but also how far would we fall. Okay, so let me just set you guys down here and we'll just take a look at what that does on the load cell here. Okay, all right, so you can see that those weights are not on the ground. They didn't hit the ground, so we should have a fairly accurate reading. Let's check the load cell here. So it is reading 884 pounds, which is 402 kilos. Okay, so on a 100-pound load, that is an incredible shock load. And then the other thing that I want to check here is what is the distance? So we said it was about 8 inches above. My tape is measuring to the beaner is measuring about 20 inches, okay? So when I say that you'll fall double, you are falling double, but there can also be a little bit extra. Your ropes are going to stretch, your system might slip down a bit, so you're going to take an incredible fall. The only reason that I got thinking about this is because this happened to me last year. I took a bad fall. I have a good scar on my thumb that reminds me every single time I set a basal anchor, it reminds me of this concept. I had always thought, if that twig snaps, I'm only going to fall that distance. Well, no, you're going to take a good fall, a hard fall. It's going to be hard on your body, your harness, your bridge, your hardware, your ropes, and the tie-in point and the tree. I mean, it's a bad fall. So think a lot about this when you're setting up basal anchors. Whenever you're over a little twig above, obviously we try and snap those from the ground, and sometimes you can snap those, but you can't always snap them. So I was going to set up something much more complicated with multiple different weights and ropes and different heights and things, but what I did was I came out here and I tested it with 100 pounds just from 8 inches, what I just showed you guys, and I was shocked at what that generated. So I think this makes my point. I don't really see a point in testing even worse scenarios. I mean, the fall that I took, it was at least 2 feet, probably 2.5 feet above the union. So I fell a long ways and I was bloodied up. I'll try to show you here on my thumb. I don't know if you can see this, but that is a scar. That is the scar from last year when this happened to me. So hopefully this gives you guys something to think about. Hopefully this makes sense. And the next time you're setting up a basal anchor, just put a little bit more thought into what could happen if something was to go wrong up top, okay? We are going to take a better look at different scenarios for drop testing. I have a whole bunch of stuff in the works, but I think this is a good place to start. So hopefully this makes sense to you guys. Hopefully you can get some value out of it, and I'll see you on the next one. Nice job, Tommy. Yep.